This presentation is taken from a paper that I wrote in a course in power diversity in dispute resolution at Osgoode Hall Law School here in Toronto. It was taught by Yale Efron and Michelle LeBaron. And if people are interested in learning more about cultural fluency in conflict resolution, then I can teach you in 10 minutes. I would highly recommend Michelle's work. While I was taking this course, I was reading and researching quite a bit about AI, both in my professional capacity and academically. And I was also reading Joseph Friedrich's The Weirdest People in the World. For those who aren't familiar, WEIRD is an acronym that he uses for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. And in his book, Friedrich traces how, as Western societies became more literate and industrialized, this triggered shifts in societal norms away from collectivism to individualism. This resulted in changes in psychology and even, he posits, to physiology. There was an increased emphasis on self-esteem and self-reliance, and this in turn made Westerners more prone to dispositionalism and attribution error. Weirdness also correlates to low context cultures, meaning cultures that are oriented more towards literal meaning in their communication style and more focused on verbal communication than nonverbal cueing. Heinrich writes, when reasoning, weird people tend to look for universal categories and rules with which to organize the world, and mentally project straight lines to understand patterns and anticipate trends. And that passage really jumped out to me as really fundamental to our understanding of AI within our Western society. AI is universally oriented in its ability to make generalized predictions, and at the same time, it serves this Western drive for specific, efficient, and tangible analysis. It is weird psychology supercharged for a globalized, digital, knowledge-based economy. So obviously, while AI offers many benefits and promises as tools within the legal community, certainly we have heard lots today about some of the potential downfalls. And for the purpose of my paper and this talk, the one that I focused on is the issue of bias. And when we're talking about AI, bias operates on two different levels. First, there is the bias that is embedded within the tool itself, the classic bias in, bias out problem. And attempts to control this through careful screening of inputs and through engineering has led to somewhat mixed results. One only has to think back to Google's overcorrection of its Gemini image generation tool as an example of how difficult it can be to engineer your way out of this problem. But on a second level, there's also bias at the human level when someone is assessing the output of the technology. And this raises an issue known as automation bias. Automation bias is the tendency of humans to favor automated decisions, even over their own reasoned conclusions. And this very lack of transparency in AI tools, this black box nature, it actually paradoxically lends the AI an extra air of credibility. And this actually, in some cases, has the effect of leading individuals to give excessive weight to predictions generated by an AI product. And in my paper, I cite a case from the United States where a judge had relied on a recidivism score from profiling software. And as a result of his reliance on that, he actually doubled a sentence over what was contained within a plea arrangement. And the judge subsequently admitted that if he hadn't been using the software, he likely would have given a lesser sentence. But in that instance, he relied on the software over and above the reasoned agreement of defense and prosecutor. And so in my paper, I cited this as an example of why we shouldn't be completely delegating decision-making authority to AI. But as I've thought about it a little bit more preparing for this talk, I think it's very critical to our understanding of the role of the human in the loop. A lot of the guidance that has come out about the use of generative AI from law societies and bar associations across Canada in particular has really focused on making sure that there is a human in the loop to check for hallucinations. But I think it's equally important in terms of assessing bias. And so I think we have to turn our mind to how do we, as lawyers, as educators, as technologists, how do we become effective human in the loop and train others to be effective, knowing that we are coming to these tools with our own biases, cognitive and otherwise. And this is where I think that the skill set of cultural fluency actually becomes a really important tool. There's a fair bit of writing about how cultural fluency is very important for business leaders and those and in different contexts. At a most basic level, it is an understanding of cultural differences and a level of comfort in working with people who come from different cultural backgrounds. But it runs deeper than that. It means having an awareness of your own perceptual and worldview lenses and having an understanding of the lenses of others, and being able to recognize the context of different societal norms. And I think this is where it becomes important, because while social context is embedded within within the output of an AI, whether it's a large language model or an algorithm, it's silent on its face. There's no acknowledgement of that context. And so it's incumbent upon the user to recontextualize. And so if we look at the skills of cultural fluency, avoiding assumptions, recognizing differences in nuance, recognizing preconceptions, both your own and those of others, and overall maintaining this sense of genuine curiosity, this allows you to approach the outputs with a more critical eye and to question the underlying assumptions. I mean, AI, in the way that it functions, it looks for patterns without really giving a lot of consideration to underlying processes of meaning making. AI doesn't care about or understand human meaning or values or context. And from a programming perspective, I mean, this isn't really a flaw in the system as much as it's a feature. It's deliberately programmed to ignore social context so that models can be deployed to perform multiple tasks. But cultural fluency then gives you the skill set to help you recontextualize the output that lacks that social context on its face, but nonetheless is a product of it. It helps you to overcome traps of ethnocentricity and over-indexing on universality. And so as a starting point, just doing some work on getting an understanding of your own cultural conditioning. And through this self-examination, you'll become more attuned to understanding where your own biases and judgments lie, and be more well-equipped to identify those in the outputs. And with that, I'll open up to any questions.